The stars above the planet Velmira were calm, but inside the girl's heart there was only storm. Liari stood silently in front of the tall mirror in her chamber. Her skin, soft and pale like morning fog, shimmered under the golden lights of the room. Her long silver hair was braided with beads of tradition, symbols of obedience and family duty. Her violet eyes, though wide and beautiful, were filled with sadness. She was dressed in a ceremonial gown, one worn only for one purpose, marriage, but this was not the kind of marriage she had dreamed of as a child. There was no celebration in her soul, only silence and fear. Her father entered the room. His back was bent with age, and his face carried lines of many hard years. "It is time, Liari," he said, trying not to look into her eyes. She turned slowly, holding her emotions deep inside. "Does he know?" she asked quietly. "Does the human know I am being given to him because we owe them money?" Her father hesitated. "No. To him this is a diplomatic bond, a gesture of peace. He is not a cruel man, from what we've heard." Liari looked down. "Then maybe he deserves better than a woman sold to him like an object." Her father sighed deeply. "You are not being sold. You are saving us all. If we do not pay the debt, our home will be taken. Your brothers will be sent to work camps. Your mother—" "She is already ill, Liari. Please." She nodded once, feeling the weight of everything crash down again. Her mother's weak breaths, her brother's hopeful faces, her father's trembling hands. Her people had borrowed from Earth's Expansion Council to rebuild their farming zones after a storm destroyed half their crops, but the repayment came sooner than expected, and they could not pay. Then came Earth's offer. A cultural marriage, peaceful and respectful. One human male, one Velmiran bride. It would settle the debt completely. Liari's name was chosen. She was only 20 cycles old. They took her in a smooth silver shuttle, flying over the sky like a soft breeze. The Earth outpost on Velmira was clean, quiet, and very modern. Green, glass buildings and polished white streets gave the place a soft but cold feeling. Liari was led through a large hall filled with Earth officials and some Velmiran elders. Her hands were shaking, but she hid them inside the long sleeves of her gown. Her heart beat louder with every step. At the front of the hall stood a man. He was tall for a human, dressed in simple but fine clothes. No armor, no weapons, no crown. Just a plain tunic and dark trousers. His hair was short and dark brown, his eyes kind and quiet. He stood with his hands behind his back, and when he saw her, he bowed slightly. Liari stopped walking. For a moment, she forgot everything. She had expected many things. A soldier, maybe, a commander, someone strict, serious, maybe even arrogant. But this man looked nervous. He smiled, just a little. "You must be Liari," he said. "I'm Rain. It's good to meet you." His voice was calm, not forceful, not proud, just gentle. She wanted to answer, but her throat felt dry. Instead, she nodded once and lowered her head respectfully, as her culture taught. He didn't try to take her hand. He didn't stare at her in a strange way. He simply turned to the speaker beside them and waited for the ceremony to begin. The Tio joining ceremony was short. It was mostly symbolic, as the agreement had already been signed by both governments. The alien elder spoke of unity, peace, and trust. Then the Earth official added a few lines about cultural exchange and cooperation. Finally, the two were told to step forward and place their hands together. Rain held out his hand slowly, waiting for her to respond. She looked at it, strong but clean, open, not grabbing or forcing. She placed her hand into his. Their fingers touched. She flinched, just slightly. He didn't react. After the ceremony, they were taken to a private residence just outside the city. It was small but quiet, surrounded by a garden with plants from both Earth and Velmira. There was a soft blue sky above, and a light breeze that smelled of blossoms. Rain opened the door for her. "This place is yours too now," he said. "You can use any room you like. I'll take the guest room." Liari blinked. "Guest room?" she asked softly. He nodded. I figured maybe you'd like some space. We don't know each other yet, and I don't want you to feel trapped. For the first time since the day began, Liari looked up into his eyes. They were brown, but not dull. There was warmth there. Not the kind that burns, the kind that waits. Thank you, she said, her voice almost a whisper. Rain gave her a small smile. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. I'm not much of a cook, but I've been practicing. He left her alone in the entry hall. Liari stood there for a while, staring at the floor, at the walls, at the soft light from the windows. It was not a palace. It was not a prison. It was just a home. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. She had come here, expecting a cage, but instead, she had found a stranger who offered her freedom. The soft light of Velmira's second moon passed through the window as Liari sat alone in her new room. It was quiet. The walls were painted a calm green, the bed covered with clean white sheets. A few potted plants sat in the corners, one from Earth and one from Velmira, placed side by side like her and Rain. She had barely unpacked. Her fingers touched the edge of the window as she looked outside. The city lights were far and this place was peaceful. She had never lived this far from her family, from her people. The silence felt heavy. A knock came at her door. Liari? It was Rain's voice, gentle. I made some food, if you're hungry. She hesitated for a few seconds, then opened the door. Rain stood there holding 2 bowls of soup, one Earth-style, and the other something made from Velmiran roots. He looked nervous. I didn't know what you liked, so I tried both. Liari took the bowl carefully. Thank you, she said. They sat at a small round table in the kitchen. The chairs didn't match. One was smooth metal, the other was carved wood, much like the two of them, different yet somehow sitting together. Rain tried the earth soup first and made a small face. Still not good, he said with a chuckle. I followed the recipe, but it's missing something. Liari took a small spoonful of the Velmiran dish. It was close to home, warm and familiar. This one is better. Rain smiled. Glad I got at least one right. There was a pause. Liari looked at him, unsure what to say. This man was still a stranger, but he was kind. Not once had he treated her like an object or spoken to her like she was beneath him. She had expected commands. Instead, she found respect. I thought humans were more forceful, she said quietly. Rain raised an eyebrow. Some are, maybe, but I'm just me. She blinked, surprised by the answer. Why did you accept this marriage? Did they tell you everything? Rain looked down at his bowl. He stirred the soup with his spoon slowly. They said it was part of a peace-building program, a way to connect both worlds better. I didn't know about your family's debt until the day of the ceremony, but I had already signed. Liari's lips parted. So you didn't know? I was being given as payment. Rain shook his head. No. And when I found out, I wanted to refuse. But then I saw you. You looked so strong, but also afraid, and I thought maybe it's better if you're with someone who won't hurt you. His words were simple, but they hit deep. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even her own people. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked. He smiled faintly. Because kindness is free, and because I wouldn't want to be treated like a dead either. The next few days passed slowly, but not uncomfortably. They shared meals, took walks around the garden, and spoke about small things, weather, favorite foods, stories from childhood. Liari found herself laughing once when Rain tried a spicy Velmiran fruit and almost choked. You didn't warn me, he had said, reaching for water. You didn't ask, she replied with a rare smile. Each day the space between them grew smaller, but Rain never crossed any lines. He never asked her to sleep in his room, never touched her without reason. And in those quiet moments, Liari felt something strange. Peace. One morning, She walked into the main room and saw Rain fixing a broken light fixture. His hands were dirty, and his shirt was stained with oil. He was focused, face lit by sunlight, trying to make her new home better. She watched him for a long time before speaking. "You do not have to do this." Rain turned and shrugged. "I know, but I want to." Liari tilted her head. "Even though I'm just a contract wife?" Rain stood up and wiped his hands. "You're not just anything, Liari. You're a person, and you deserve to feel safe, even if you didn't choose this." Her throat tightened. So many people had spoken about her, around her, over her. But Rain always spoke to her. That night, she sat under the stars in the garden. The air was cool, the sky full of tiny white dots. Velmira's moons floated gently above like watchful guardians. Rain joined her with a blanket and 2 warm cups of leaf tea. "I used to sit under the stars when I was a child," he said. "I'd pretend each star was a person watching me." Liari took a sip. "I used to think the stars were eyes of ancient spirits." They both looked up. "How are you really feeling?" Rain asked after a pause. Liari took a deep breath. "Like I'm waiting for something to go wrong." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense. But," she added, "I'm also not afraid, anymore. At least, not of you." Rain didn't smile or speak. He just sat there, letting her words stay in the air. And that was enough. Later that night, as she stood in front of her mirror again, Liari looked at herself differently. Her hair was loose, her eyes calm. She still felt the weight of her family's situation, but something had changed. She wasn't crying anymore. Not because the pain was gone, but because someone had shown her she wasn't alone in it. The marriage was still a contract. The debt still existed. But maybe, just maybe, a real connection could grow from it. As she closed her eyes to sleep, Liari whispered one soft word under her breath. "Thank you." The sun rose gently over the quiet garden, casting soft golden light through the window. Liari sat alone in the small reading room. She had found a few Earth books on a shelf, most of them simple stories. She didn't understand all the words, but she liked the pictures. They reminded her that even in a strange world, beauty could still exist. Rain entered with a fresh cup of tea. "You're up early," he said with a kind smile. She nodded, placing the book on her lap. "I couldn't sleep." He set the tea down beside her. "Bad dreams?" "No," she said softly. "Just thinking too much." Rain sat across from her, careful not to intrude. "Would you like to talk about it?" Liari hesitated. Then, for the first time, she asked something personal. "Rain, why are you here on Velmira? Not just the marriage, but here, this place. You don't seem like someone who belongs to politics." Rain leaned back in his chair and looked out the window. "You're right. I'm not a politician. I used to be a technician for Earth's agricultural program. I helped design farming systems for colony planets." Liari tilted her head slightly. "Then why this? Why agree to a marriage with someone you never met?" Rain smiled sadly. "A few years ago, I lost someone close. My brother. He died during an outbreak on a colony that didn't have enough support. I tried to help, but I was too late." Liari lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." "It made me realize," Rain continued, "we're building colonies and cities in space, but we forget the people in them. I thought if I joined the interplanetary peace program, maybe I could help by connecting better, listening better." Liari stared at him for a long moment. "You speak like someone who carries pain." Rain chuckled softly. "Don't we all?" Later that day, Rain left to attend a local council meeting. Liari remained at the house, cleaning and organizing the space. As she moved a few documents on his desk, a thin folder slipped out. She picked it up to place it back. But something caught her eye. Her name, printed in clean black letters across the top. Curious, she opened the folder. Inside was information about the marriage agreement, more than she had ever seen before. Official documents from both Earth and Velmyra, including legal terms and council stamps. Then she found something that stopped her cold. One paper showed a section titled, Debt Transfer Agreement. It clearly said her marriage to Rain was a condition to erase her family's financial obligations. She had always known this, but seeing it written so plainly, so coldly, hurt in a different way. Worse still, there was a note from an Earth official. Ensure the human male is unaware of the full debt terms until after union is secured. Liari's breath caught. They had lied to him. When Rain returned, Liari met him at the door with the folder in her hands. Her face was unreadable. He looked surprised. "What's wrong?" "You didn't know the truth," she said quietly. Not until it was too late. Rain took the folder and read the page. His face tightened as he reached the note. For a moment he didn't speak. "I'm sorry," Liari said. "I shouldn't have read your papers, but—" "No," Rain interrupted. "You did the right thing." His voice was calm, but there was anger in his eyes, anger not at her, but at the people who had tricked them both. "I trusted the peace program. I thought they were honest," he said. "But they used both of us." Liari stepped closer. "My father told me it was the only way to save our family, that if I refused, everything we had would be taken. I didn't know they would lie to you." Rain nodded slowly. "Now we both know." He sat down, staring at the folder on the table. They turned something sacred into a business deal. "I never wanted this marriage," Liari whispered. Rain looked up. "And I never wanted to be part of something unfair." For a moment they sat in silence. Two people from two worlds, trapped in a system neither of them created. Then Rain stood. "I'll go to the council. I'll demand they cancel the contract." Liari's eyes widened. "No, you can't." "Why not?" "If you break the agreement now," she said with a shaking voice, "my family will suffer. The debt will return. They'll lose everything. My mother is sick. My brothers will be forced into labor. You can't let that happen." Rain's jaw clenched. "But this isn't fair to you either." "I know," she said, "but please, don't fight them. Not yet." He looked at her, saw the tears welling up in her eyes. She wasn't begging for herself. She was begging for her loved ones. "I won't let them hurt your family," he finally said, "but I'll find another way." That evening, Rain didn't speak much. He sat by his old tablet, scanning legal codes and interplanetary agreements. Liari sat in the garden staring at the stars again. She wondered if they would ever be free, from duty, from debt, from all the pressure placed on them by others. Yet one thing had changed. She didn't feel alone anymore. Rain wasn't just her contract partner. He was becoming something more. A friend. A shield. Maybe even a chance for something real. As she stood to return inside, she saw him asleep at the table, still sitting upright, his head resting on his arm. The screen beside him glowed faintly with documents about contract laws and cultural rights. He was trying to protect her, without asking for anything in return. She watched him for a long moment, then carefully placed a blanket over his shoulders. Her fingers brushed against his arm. He stirred a little but didn't wake. For the first time in days, her heart didn't feel heavy. It felt full. The peaceful days in their small home were broken by a sudden harsh knock at the door. Liari's heart froze. The heavy sound echoed through the quiet halls, loud and serious. She looked at Rain, who stood slowly, his face tightening with concern. Before either could speak, the door was pushed open. A group of Velmyran officials stepped inside. Their uniforms were sharp and decorated with symbols of authority. One of them, a tall woman with silver hair and cold eyes, stepped forward. "Liari," she said in a voice that held no warmth, "you must return with us immediately." Liari's eyes searched Rain's face. She saw the shock, then the determination. "No," Rain said firmly. "She is not coming with you." The silver-haired woman raised an eyebrow. You have broken the terms of your marriage, human. Your behavior is unacceptable. Liari belongs to the Velmiran Council until the debt is fully paid. Rain's jaw clenched. She is not property. The woman's eyes narrowed. You forget. Your place. This marriage was arranged to settle a debt. You are her husband by contract alone. Your feelings do not change the law. Liari stepped forward, voice shaking but loud. Please don't take me away. I am not a prize or a tool. I have rights. The officials exchanged looks, then the woman spoke again. You will come with us now. Before Liari could react, 2 guards moved to take her arm. Rain acted quickly. He stepped between Liari and the guards, holding up his hands. If you want her, you must go through me. The tension in the room grew heavy. The guards hesitated. Liari looked at Rain, fear and hope mixing in her eyes. You don't have to fight them alone, she whispered. Rain nodded. We'll find a way out. That night, Liari and Rain planned their escape. They knew the council would send more guards if they stayed. The debt was a cage and the officials were the jailers. We need to get to the outer moon, Rain said, pointing at a holographic map of the area. There's a small research station. It's quiet and far from the city. We can hide there until we figure out what to do. Liari bit her lip. But what about my family? If I run, they might face worse punishment. Rain's eyes softened. I promise I will protect them. We will find a way to fix this. She looked at him, unsure, but she knew she could not go back to being a prisoner. Together they gathered supplies, a small bag of clothes, food, and tools. Before dawn, they slipped out of the house. The streets were quiet, but the city's eyes were everywhere. They moved carefully, avoiding patrols and security cameras. The journey to the moon was tense and slow. The shuttle they found was old but reliable. Liari sat by the window, watching the stars pass by. She held Rain's hand tightly. I never thought running would feel so scary, she said softly. Rain squeezed her hand. Sometimes, fear means you're alive. It means you care. She looked up at him, a faint smile breaking through her sadness. When the shuttle landed, they found the research station dark and silent. Inside, they set up a small base. For the first time in weeks, Liari felt a glimmer of hope. In the safety of the station, they talked more openly. Liari told Rain stories of Velmira, its mountains, rivers, and ancient forests. How her people lived simply, connected to nature. Rain shared tales of Earth's cities, the oceans, and the stars they both wished to explore. With each story, they learned more about each other. Not as a contract bride and reluctant groom, but as 2 souls finding friendship in a vast universe. One evening, as they watched a distant storm swirl on Velmira from the station's window, Liari turned to Rain. I was afraid of you, she admitted, of what this marriage meant. But now, I am afraid of losing you. Rain looked into her eyes. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But their escape did not go unnoticed. The next day, a message came from the Velmiran Council. Return. Liari immediately or face consequences. Rain and Liari exchanged worried looks. Is this the end? Liari asked. Rain shook his head. No. It's only the beginning. We will fight for your freedom. Together. They held hands, ready to face whatever came next. The small research station hummed quietly as Liari and Rain prepared for what might be their most important day. Outside, the twin moons of Velmira glowed softly, casting gentle light across the dusty plains below. The tension in the room was thick, but their hands were tightly joined, a silent promise between them. Rain had spent hours studying the interplanetary laws and contract codes. He had found a rare clause, almost forgotten, hidden deep within the legal texts. It said that if the bride declared her genuine feelings openly before the Interplanetary Council, the marriage contract could be annulled, and the debt forgiven by mutual agreement. But there was a catch. The bride must say these words freely and from her heart. It could not be forced or spoken under pressure. Rain looked at Liari. This is your choice. No one can make you say what you don't mean. But if you want freedom, real freedom, this is the chance. Liari's eyes shone with tears. Not of fear, but of hope. I want to choose, she said softly. But I want it to be my choice. Rain smiled gently. Then we will go to the council together. The journey back to the city was careful and quiet. No guards followed them this time, but the weight of the council's power hung in the air. At the Great Hall, the Interplanetary Council waited. Representatives from Velmyra, Earth, and many other planets filled the room. It was cold and formal, but Liari stood tall. For the first time, she felt strength inside her. When the council president asked her to speak, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. Looking out at the crowd, she said clearly and without hesitation, I love Rain. Not because I was told to, not because of a contract or a debt, but because he saw me as a person. He did not treat me as a prize or a payment. He treated me with kindness, respect, and freedom. That is why I stand here today, choosing my own path. The room fell silent. Some council members exchanged surprised looks, but no one spoke against her. The president nodded slowly. Then by the laws of the interplanetary agreement, the contract is nullified. The debt is considered paid in full by the bond of trust and respect you have shown. Outside the hall, Rain and Liari stood hand in hand. The sky above Velmyra was bright with the colors of dawn. Liari looked at Rain and smiled freely, without fear or sorrow. I am no longer a debt, she said softly. I am a wife by choice. Rain pulled her close, his heart full. And I am a husband by honor. They knew the road ahead would not be easy. The past debts and old traditions might still try to hold them back, but together, they had broken the chains. Liari's family was safe, her people respected, and a new story had begun, a story of two worlds connected not by force or fear, but by choice and love. As the days passed, Liari and Rain became symbols of change. Their courage showed that even the oldest laws could be rewritten by simple kindness and brave hearts. And on a quiet night, under the stars they both loved, Liari whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Rain smiled, holding her close. "Thank you for trusting me."